rooms. You can always mute, unmute. We'll also turn on the closed captioning option if Ami or Evelyn could do that. So as we go through the session, there will be a transcript available upon request. That's not something that we'll post on our website, but if anyone has special needs and would need access to the transcript, we'll have that available as well. So you should see in your control panel an option to turn on the dictation, or something may have popped up asking you to okay that. That is just the closed captioning getting turned on, so that'll be available for you. Many of you have already signed in the chat. Shout out to, I see Susanna and Ashley from ODE. Hope I'm not missing anyone else from ODE, but shout out to our ODE flies on the wall today. They're here just to learn and observe, right? This is your learning space, but they like to be flies on the wall in our learning space. So they'll do that with us today. So thank you everyone for signing in. If you could, sometimes in this space, we have folks, where we have a group of people all from the same district. If you are here with one of your colleagues, maybe just go in, actually everyone can do this, so this is a little more direct. If you could just go into your name in the participants list, and if you hover over your name, you'll see an option to click, and you can rename yourself. You don't have to rush through this. If you need help, just let me know in the chat. But if you could put your school district in your rename so that I can split you up a little bit in the breakout room, so you get the opportunity to meet somebody new who's maybe not in your district, that will be super helpful. So I'll keep an eye on the participants list for this, and I'll do this myself so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So now you can kind of see where the host is, my name, on the little box, it might be kind of hard to see, but on the list, you can see Lisa-COHHIO. So if you want to put like Amy-Marion Schools, or, whatever, Dawn, this ESC, let me know so I can try to spread people around, okay? So take a minute and you can chip away at that. You'll have a little time to do it. And let me check the chat, make sure everyone is getting what I'm saying here. Looks like the slides are in there. Everyone's getting checked in. Wonderful. So I'm going to go through our agenda for today. And as we get to the breakout room portion, if I need anything, if I need to know who you're with, I'll just ask you. So don't stress too much about this. I just thought it would be a nice, helpful way to kind of organize us a little more efficiently remotely. I'm trying not to get too burnout on Zoom and continue to use it in creative ways. I'm sure many of you can relate. So with that, our agenda for today, introductions, activity, getting to know each other, right? We're going to do a quick warm up with that. We're going to review some best practices and have some discussion. So we're going to talk about best practices in awareness for students and families experiencing homelessness and/or McKinney-Vento awareness. We're going to talk about outreach, and we're going to talk about professional development. We'll do that mostly in breakout rooms and a little bit in big group, but today's really going to be stretching that muscle of getting to know who is in this community of practice with you, okay? And then we're going to do a challenge workshop where our breakout rooms are going to go from a little smaller to a little bigger. And we're going to dive into some things as some small group together, and COHHIO will facilitate through that workshop, and then we'll kind of debrief discussion after. And then we'll provide you with a bunch of resources, and we'll close out. We'll let you know about our next session. We'll see what questions, if any, are coming up for folks, and that will be how we wrap up today. I want to let everyone know that I'm hopeful that you're really going to enjoy today's session and all these opportunities to workshop with your colleagues. And so if we run out of time on any of these areas that we're really interested in, I want to just kind of give everybody permission to know that that is okay. And if you want, we can come back in our next meeting and revisit some of the things that we talk about today. So don't feel rushed to try to get all of your ideas out. Don't feel like today is the only time that we're going to be able to talk about these things. Like I said, our community is going to continue to shift over these next couple of months for more discussion. So I want you to just feel really invited to keep these discussions going, and definitely let me know if these are things that you want to keep talking about. So this isn't a one and done. It doesn't have to end today. I'm just really thinking of it as getting started today. Okay. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ami, who's going to walk us through our warm-up activity, and I'm going to start to organize our breakout rooms while Ami is walking us through our breakout room activity.
Yes, thank you so much, Lisa. Hi again, everyone. Good to see you all. So for our welcome activity today, Lisa is going to put us in the breakout room. And in the breakout room, I want you to please share your name, your district. If you could have a new skills in an instant, what would it be? Like for me, I've been thinking about this. I'm like, you would probably be learning how to sing because I'm so bad at it. And the next question will be one word, just one word to describe how you feel about starting a new school year. Does that sound good? Yeah, okay, awesome. So Lisa, if you can put us please in the breakout room. And actually I'm gonna ask these questions in the chat room too, just in case.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to start opening breakout rooms here in just a minute. You'll see it pop up on your screen. So just give me a couple minutes here. We're gonna do 7 minutes in the breakout rooms today. So we'll see if that's enough time. Like I said, we will come back to these topics if we think that that might be helpful. And I'm just getting folks moved in. So thank you for your patience. There we go. Sorry, my Zoom's just kind of on a little bit of a lag today. Almost done.
Take your time.
I'm just trying to be a little intentional about this. And also trying to do math at the same time. Okay, I think I got everybody.
Okay.
So you should see the option to join. If I see any of you lingering in here, I'm going to take the screen down for just a second so I can see better. Then I'll move you in.
Okay.
Miss someone? All right, Ellen and Ami, I just about to say, I got everyone in there and I set a timer.
Who just joined in?
What's that?
We have someone who just joined in. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll put her in if I can find. Hi, Lisa. We just went into breakout room, so I'm going to send you into one.
Should we pause the recording?
Sure.
Do we need to get Tabitha from Hamilton County? I see.
It's just waiting for Zoom to, yeah, she's in. Mm-hmm. That came out of your breakout rooms. Throw some one words in the chat. Send me a private message if you found yourself in a breakout room with people that you meet with all the time and you're wanting to switch it up a little bit. I'm happy to move you around in the next round. Otherwise, we will use these same breakout rooms throughout. So if you need me to move you so that you can connect with someone new, happy to do it. Otherwise, we'll keep moving through. So throw those one words in the chat. I'm really excited to see how folks are feeling, and all feelings are valid, right? About a new year. I think all feelings are valid. So please, please, please feel like this is a safe space to share how you're feeling, and hopefully picking up a little bit of energy from others. Love what I'm seeing, anxious, overwhelmed, but also rested, hopeful, excited, great, optimistic. I'm just excited. I think everyone in Maple Heights is happy to hear that. We want our educators and folks in the district feeling excited to come back. I think the young people are excited. Lots of transition. My son's going into 8th grade and has a new principal, so that'll be an exciting new experience for him. He's been asking me all kinds of questions I can't answer at home, so I'm sure lots of young people are getting excited. So with that, Ami, should I go ahead and move us forward
Yes.
a little bit now that folks are feeling warmed up? All right.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. So during registration, we did ask you about your district awareness of the McKinney-Vento law, and we gathered the data. And as you can see on this pie chart, people who chose 2, 3, and 4 is the vast majority with some level of understanding of the law, but still some room for growth, which is really awesome. So that's what we're here for today. Next slide, please, Lisa.
Yes, and as I fumble with that, I just always like to let people know that we are really looking at what you're putting in registration and really trying to use it to inform our work and share it with each other. So that beautiful pie chart made by the lovely Evelyn is a glowing example of how we can do that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. And as Lisa mentioned at the beginning, we will be sharing providing a lot of best practices today on awareness, outreach, and professional development. But before we dig into it, I would like to ask you, who else is on this slide that is not on your staff that is not mentioned on this slide? Do you want to share that in the chat? I want to make sure we capture everyone.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to that, right? I know when you all are working on awareness, and we saw it in the pie chart, that awareness is sometimes really, really broad. You know, you're really trying to increase awareness across the entire district. And so, you know, we put together a few images here to capture some of the roles. And so we just wanted to make sure sometimes there's folks out there you're trying to increase awareness about that we need to consider that may not be on this slide, that we need to think about and that other districts might be working on. So if you feel like you're working hard on awareness in another sort of with another group within your district that's not named on this slide, just let us know. We just want to make sure that we're really thinking of everybody and being inclusive in our outreach. Anything else we want to mention here, Ami?
Yes. So number one on best practices for awareness, I feel like working as a team, that's kind of like almost a universal law at this point. So like I always say, alone we can do so little, right? But together we can do so much. And in order for us to end youth homelessness, we have to be talking about it. We have to make sure that the staff in your district or your schools or your programs are ensured of your role, okay? By the staff being ensured of your role, it makes it easier for us to identify the sign of homelessness within their own roles. So when we talk about staff, who are we referring to? School nurses, bus drivers, cafeteria staff, resource officers, administrators like principals or director. So it's important that everyone knows your role in the district, and that's the way we can provide more awareness on youth homelessness. Next slide, please, Lisa. Do you want to add?
Yeah, Ami, I just want to elevate. One person shared a couple people shared a couple things that they're doing awareness, folk groups they're doing awareness with that we didn't include on the slide. And so I just want to elevate those because I want to make sure everyone is thinking about some of these additional groups, right? There's just, you can never get everything in a slideshow. It's like just the beginning, right? So the folks listed up coaches as another really important area of awareness. Huge and super important. I mean, most things are happening not during school hours, right? And so coaches have some visibility that many folks in the building or admin do not. So that's huge and a really important group to be providing awareness information to. And then another really important one got listed up a couple times is school and community liaison. So ESCs, I definitely think that's critical. I feel I'm not gonna, yeah, I think that's so critical. We should have had it on the slide, I'll just say that. And I think this is, I wanna just elevate it because we have to maneuver within these district lines, but our families are moving in and out of district lines. And so ESCs, right, are like such a pathway to this mobility of multiple districts and really thinking about our communities from a regional perspective and just bring a wealth of open perspective. So definitely a key group to be working on awareness with and can definitely support awareness activities. And then another one that was elevated was, or a couple were librarians and classroom aides. So I think those are all also really, really good reminders for awareness, right? We often think of like the thing right in front of us, and we don't always think about the things that are happening a little more anecdotally and on individual level between, you know, a classroom aide and a librarian or whatever. So thank you for adding some additional folks. And Ami, I'm sorry, I'm gonna move this on to the next slide.
Oh, no, you are perfectly fine. Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for adding those. As we know, another best practice for awareness is incorporating the topic, right? So we are all aware of how tricky the topic of homelessness can be, but to make people feel comfortable, we can incorporate it in the curriculum or during school assemblies. And what does that do by incorporating the topic? It reduces the stigma around the issue and allows for more communication and identification, right? So awareness training, that's another best practice. And here's our two suggestions that we have for you. During staff meeting, have brief updates on youth homelessness so everyone is aware of what's happening in the school. Have more intensive workshop that targets those specific goals around youth homelessness, experiencing homelessness, and educational outcomes. Next slide, please, Lisa.
Those are great. And, you know, for anyone who's like, you know, we know this, I do know you know this, but I want to remind everybody, right, a little bit of a refresher as we go into the new year. And I want to also just invite you, if there's any really cool ways or things that you're trying out that you're incorporating these awareness activities into, just like the last slide, put them in the chat, because all the ideas, right? Let's generate all the ideas here. We can capture those, continue to think about them. This is just scratching the surface, right? These are some preliminary ways we can make sure we're including this into our daily workload. So you're probably already doing this and even more than this. So let me know in the chat anything else that you're working on.
Thank you, Lisa. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry, is that it?
So Lisa mentioned, yeah, this one. Lisa mentioned at the beginning of the session that we are gonna have a small breakout rooms going on today to have discussion, because we want to allow you guys to express yourself, to share ideas among peers. So we're gonna start the second breakout room. Lisa is about to put you in a breakout room. And in that breakout rooms, we have two questions that we would like for you to discuss among peers. And if someone can facilitate during those breakout room, and then we can discuss it when you come back after the breakout room, that would be awesome. I put those questions in the chat. And the first question is, which collaborative relationship with staff have been most effective in increasing the identification of students experiencing homelessness? That's the first question. The second question is, which relationship could be strengthened to increase McKinney-Vento awareness? So we can now wait to hear all the wonderful discussion that you are about to have. Lisa, if you could please put us in a breakout room. Thank you so much.
Yes, and as I'm opening the breakout rooms, Dawn just shared that Pickaway County ESC does a monthly McKinney-Vento newsletter to share resources and information. Dawn, if you have one of those handy and you want to attach it in the chat so people can see what y'all are doing over in Pickaway County, please feel free to do that. If you don't have easy access to it, you can always email it to me and I can share it on your behalf. So great example. I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout rooms, jot down what you talk about, and be prepared to share some of it in the chat when we come back. Okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right. So they've got about 10 seconds in their breakout rooms and they'll be coming back. Welcome back. Welcome back. that was the beginning of a children's movie song that I just made up in my head. I think, so hopefully these questions got some thoughts percolating. Which collaborative relationships with staff have been most effective in increasing the identifications of students experiencing homelessness? Let us know in the chat which one of these relationships has been key. If you're still kind of figuring that out, let me know. If you're thinking that you're going to have to do some adjusting in the new school year, let us know. We don't have a time to debrief every single group today, but would definitely like to see some of the thoughts and things that came up in the breakout rooms percolating in the chat so we can get an idea of what you all are chatting about in there. The other question was, which relationships could be strengthened to increase McKinney-Vento awareness? And I have a feeling we have lots of thoughts about that. So I would love to see some of the ideas folks have and some of the hopes that you have in terms of strengthening relationships. And so let's see what's coming in the chat. Ami, we got guidance counselors, as well as local children's services, front office staff, library aides, janitorial staff, guidance counselors, bus drivers, front office staff, bus drivers, principals at each school. Wow, really critical relationships with a broad range of folks in order to move this work forward in your district. So that's really helpful. It has been key to identification to work with truancy officers. This has allowed us to reach out and help families that did not know there was help for them. Totally. Yep. Thanks so much for sharing that. All right, well, keep those thoughts coming in. If there's other things that you talked about, judging by the number that was in there, I'm assuming that was probably the main themes from the total amount of breakout rooms that there were. But if you had other thoughts you didn't get out, you didn't have enough time, or something that you continue to ruminate on as we're talking, feel free to throw it in the chat. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about outreach. Right? Am I on the right slide, Evelyn?
Yes, you are.
I was, okay, just making sure. I was like checking that body language. My slides have been a little off today. So targeted outreach. Here's the thing about outreach. You know, my first tax-paying job pretty much was doing outreach. So I've done a lot of outreach in my life for a variety of vulnerable groups, and I'm really passionate about it. I love talking about it. I could probably do the next 3 years of community practice just on outreach. So this will be brief, but I'm always game to talk about this and brainstorm. If you ever want to do some TA session work specifically on outreach, I got your back on that. So please feel free to reach out about this, but just kind of refreshers, reminders around targeted outreach, posting information regarding the rights of students experiencing homelessness. Obviously, we want to post that information in areas that families and students are likely to see, right? And so that's critical. Posting the information out in the community with community partners where families and students are frequenting to get their needs met. Sharing information about McKinney-Vento eligibility in handbooks and on your district website, in all of your informational materials distributed throughout the district, right? We really want in good quality outreach that's going to be woven in to everything, right? And it's going to try to honor the complexities of homelessness. It's not going to be one question that's a yes or no, are you experiencing homelessness, right? It's going to honor the different ways that homelessness can look, and it's going to be meaningful, and it's going to be specific to what it looks like in your community, right? And so outreach works when it speaks to the people. Otherwise, it's just another flyer, right? So it really has to be the thing that is speaking to the group that you're trying to reach. And I always think that developing materials with folks with lived expertise can be much more meaningful. We can get a little more input about what draws people in and gets their attention. Another thing we want to think about, in addition to just making sure our message is being seen, is that it's focused. In the housing system, I wanted to kind of introduce you to this term if you're not familiar with it, and revisit it if you are. In the homelessness system, we use the term housing-focused outreach. And the reason we talk about that is because when we work with folks at risk of or experiencing homelessness, they typically have a myriad of needs, right? So you all are very focused on educational needs, and you know that their needs can go sometimes well beyond some of those educational needs. And the same thing happens in the homelessness system. And so we really try to prioritize needs and stay focused on the main thing, which is getting folks into safe and stable housing. And so really thinking about how we can go beyond basic needs. So we're going beyond that backpack of food. we're going beyond that one reimbursement for transportation, and we're doing more. We're looking at those individual needs, and we're focused on moving away from here's a food pack, right, to how do we provide a food pack and start to move forward with permanent housing? What does that look like, right? And so really trying to keep the housing focus to the outreach as much as we can and have the resources to, including a navigational component when it comes to housing focused outreach. And what I mean by that is involving folks who are experts in navigating the homelessness and housing space so that folks can find that next available safe and stable unit, and really having experts in what it means to apply for a Section 8 voucher, what it means to get on a prioritization list, how do I call the coordinated entry access point, right? Folks who are familiar with this, know how to work this system, have relationships within the system, and can guide people through getting to their next space. Outreach should not be a one-time interaction, but the beginning of a relationship with ongoing support and follow-up. And I want to just kind of balance what I said earlier with it goes beyond a food pack. I want to make sure that we remember that sometimes it starts with a food pack. And sometimes we just forget that it starts with a food pack, but our goal is to go beyond that, because sometimes it takes a long time to build that trust. And so we kind of lose sight sometimes of that housing focus because we've been spending a lot of time on building that trust, and we just have to keep doing that. And we just have to do both, right? And make sure that we're trying to go beyond, but we also recognize that that can take some time to really get folks to trust us, let us know what their needs are, and work through things like that. And this really is what this slide is all about, building relationships, not just with the folks who are at risk of or experiencing homelessness, the folks who meet McKinney-Vento eligibility, but also collaboration with other programs and agencies. That's what outreach is all about, building those strong relationships, being able to call on those folks in time of need. Formalizing those is always beneficial to folks in terms of making those relationships more meaningful and getting your needs met through those relationships. So I just want to kind of elaborate a little bit beyond putting up a flyer, right, is really using that mechanism of flyers to start conversations and build relationships within your community, making that website accessible to those partners, hearing what their needs are with the outreach materials, co-collaborating on outreach efforts. All of those things are super meaningful and will improve identification and access. Best practices when it comes to outreach, building trust. We just talked about that, right? That's going to be key to any of the outreach being successful, right? Promoting collaboration and shared decision-making. So outreach isn't, here's the food bank, right? It's really like, here's the choices. Really trying to offer voice and choice in our outreach, right? Really listening to folks with lived experience and hearing what works and what doesn't work. So if there's a student that you worked with 1 year who can give some insight into what helps them to help you shape your practices, launching into a new school year is a great time to start hearing from students about what works, right? What can their lived experiences teach us about how to do this better? And then always continuous quality improvement. So what worked a couple of years ago might not work this year. What spoke to some folks on social media, they might be deaf to it now, right? And so we always have to be open to, this visual is not working. This language is not working. We need to, go back to the drawing board. We need to bring another partner in. We need to make some changes. So if we still have the same flyer from 1988, might be time to revisit and revamp, right? And so always kind of thinking about what it means to continuously improve something. When it comes to engaging folks on the outreach side, always being flexible, considering access issues, right? Like availability, language needs, transportation. These are just going to be key things that break down the communication if we don't have something in place to address it, right? So these are the things that tend to get in the way unless there's the support in place to make that work flexible. Of course, we can't talk about best practices in outreach without taking a trauma-informed approach. Many of you have spent lots of time better understanding trauma and how trauma intersects with persons experiencing homelessness. And when it comes to our outreach materials and our outreach relationship building and all the outreach work that we do, we really want to be approaching that from a trauma responsive and a trauma informed way. That can be something as small as language to something as in-depth and critical as a conversation or an assessment or a next step, right? So everything we do, we really want to try to root in those trauma informed care approaches. So with that, we're going to move into another quick discussion as a breakout room. So a couple questions to consider when you're thinking about outreach as you talk to your peers. What flexibilities does your district provide to accommodate students and families experiencing homelessness? How have these flexibilities increased engagement with students and families? And my favorite, what flexibilities could your district provide that it currently is not? And I want you to dream big on this. You know, we start to get kind of practical and think, what supplies do I need? What am I going to wear on the first week of school? What do I need to pick up? I want you to step back from your planning brain that's kicking in and just pie in the sky here. Pie in the sky on flexibilities. If we could have anything, we currently don't have it, it would be this. All right? So I just invite you to dream big as you're thinking about outreach. And with that, you'll get another 7 minutes in the breakout room. And like I said before, if you need to be moved into another breakout room to just shift up engagement, just shoot me a private message and I will move you. And breakout rooms are open.
And the
Accommodations for families, what are some of your hopes and goals? How's that flexibility helping? Give us the gymnastics version of how you're getting your work done in the chat so we can get up to speed on where you're at with that. Most folks are back. While we're waiting for someone to share a little in the chat, anybody want to come off mute and share a little about what you talked about in your breakout room? Just one little nugget.
I'll come off.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. We talked about what the flexibilities our district provide. One thing that we do is door-to-door transportation for our homeless families. And I was explaining to them sometimes it's so expensive and sometimes the parents don't send their kids to school or they don't answer the phone and that can become, you know, very costly and tricky and unfortunate because the kids don't get to come to school. They're not coming to school. And so what ends up happening is like this year I had to withdraw those children that were like in Cleveland and other areas because it was in the best interest of those kids to go to school in their district. Because, you know, we're commuting them here. It's taking them 30 minutes to get here from Cleveland or wherever else, and then they're not coming. And so that's the part that's really, really disheartening. What I didn't get to mention, I mentioned in the last conversation, but the flexibilities that our district could provide that we're currently not, we are actually in the process of creating a community resource room that this district has never had. So Maple City itself does not have any community resource center. They have a library, but they do not have a community resource center. So it's a big deal that myself and the family engagement coordinator, we are in the process of creating a community resource room to provide resources for our families.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that new development. Also, I think the door-to-door transportation is a really valuable thing for folks to hear about, and maybe we can dig into some of those challenges you were talking about as we get into the next part. So thanks so much for sharing. And I see a couple things coming in the chat. Transportation is one of the flexibilities. Anything else flexibility-wise folks want to share in the chat that came out of your session? Please, please do. This is where we really get to learn from you. And we're going to start to shift into our last little mini section of this presentation before we go into the full workshop, which is we've talked about awareness and outreach, and now we're shifting into professional development. So Evelyn, take it away.
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. So in our registration process for today's session, we asked each of you how often your district or ESC provides professional development to support the identification of students experiencing homelessness. The pie chart here reflects the results of this question, with 38% of districts offering PD on this topic annually, shown in the orange, 22% offering it as needed, shown in the red, and 6% offering it either monthly, quarterly, or every 6 months, shown in the green and yellow sections. 22% of registrants today also selected other for this question, and we were wondering if anyone who selected this would be willing to come off mute or put in the chat what this means to them in terms of how often they offer PD in their district or ESC.
I'll come off mute.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
We don't. I am the first homeless liaison who actually focused on homeless homelessness in this district. So for years, I'm not sure if it's budgeting or whatever, you know, by law, you have to have a homeless liaison on documentation for the state to say we have a homeless liaison for each district. But last year was the first year this position was actually created for just a homeless liaison. So I have been pulling my little hair out that I've been really working hard to grow for the last year because I wanted braids. I've been pulling my hair out trying to figure out a way to have to bring this to the district so that the teachers and everyone can know. Because I mean, I go from building to building, but to be able to have everybody at one time or a majority of them at one time to explain exactly and break down the McKinney-Vento law, I don't think it's ever happened at this district.
That's a really good observation. So I just put that in the chat that for some people other meant none, and we didn't have a none option because it's federal law. So our expectation is that it's happening, but that may not be what's happening on the ground, right? So well, we know that there's barriers on the ground, but so that's a helpful observation. If there's anybody else on the meeting today that is doing professional development at a frequency that's like not represented on this pie chart, please let us know in the chat. Those frequencies are really interesting to us and things that we are trying to learn from. So sorry, Evelyn, take it back.
All good. Actually, if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. So when it comes to PD to support the identification of students at risk of or experiencing homelessness, training district and school personnel on the McKinney-Vento Act and related policies is a great place to start laying a foundation of awareness. This means training your staff to understand the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness, identify the signs of homelessness in your district, and connect students to their local liaison when identified. It also means preparing your staff to understand and respond to the needs of families experiencing homelessness in your district by providing an overview of homelessness and poverty locally, paying special attention to vulnerable populations and local risk factors, as well as existing resources and services. Information and professional development tools should be provided to staff in multiple ways to support all types of learners, including in-person trainings, paper copies of materials, online resources, videos, podcasts, and social media. Trainings provided to staff on identifying and supporting students at risk of or experiencing homelessness should not be one and done, but ongoing throughout the year and informed by the needs of students and families in your district. And if you go to the next slide. As mentioned earlier, it is important that district and school personnel working with students and families experiencing homelessness understand the effects of trauma. These staff additionally need to be trained about the effects of trauma on service providers such as themselves, understanding that direct exposure to trauma, secondary traumatic stress, and vicarious trauma can lead to physical, emotional, and behavioral changes in staff. Examples of these changes can include increased depression and anxiety, trouble regulating emotions, diminished concentration and difficulty with decision-making, diminished energy and patience, and increased irritability with coworkers and youth, fatigue and physical complaints, and poor work and attendance and performance. Preparing staff for the effects of trauma exposure is imperative, as engagement and safety become compromised when both school personnel and students are affected by trauma. Next slide. Yep, perfect. Situations where school personnel and students are significantly affected by trauma may become increasingly crisis-driven, reactive, and dysregulated. In situations like these, staff risk re-traumatizing youth by operating in ways that mirror or replicate previous trauma, such as creating unpredictable environments, employing rigid rules and procedures that are disempowering, or treating youth disrespectfully. Training district and school personnel to avoid re-traumatizing practices when working with youth experiencing homelessness may look like practicing self-care, recognizing the effects of trauma on youth, families, and service providers, maximizing youth voice and choice to promote shared power and collaboration, avoiding harsh, punitive, and shaming practices that disempower youth, and adopting positive and restorative practices that promote healing and resilience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Evelyn. I think we should go ahead and maybe move into our next larger breakout room for the sake of time, just so we have plenty of time to dig into our little workshopping element of today. But I want to invite anyone who's thinking about professional development, any questions that you might have, any thoughts that you might have, things that you're doing to train folks, things that you're doing that have been effective, what the gaps are. Those are all things that we're interested in. So please feel free to share them in the chat. And this conversation really lends itself to our next conversation here. And so what we're going to do is start to morph into these larger breakout rooms. And one of the things that we did as part of our registration process before you all came to this meeting, was ask you what were some of your challenges in these areas of awareness, outreach, professional development. Sorry, I'm like looking both ways. I can see you here and I can see the slides over here. Giving myself a little bit of whiplash. And so you identified some of these things within each area. Awareness, you know, folks said minimal McKinney-Vento awareness from high school administration specifically. I think that can go both ways. In some districts, there's more awareness at the high school level and less at the elementary level, or vice versa. So if you're feeling the opposite of that, the opposite is true too. This is just kind of what came in through registration. Identification is one of the biggest challenges our districts face. Staff remembering that we are a resource. I think that's a really big one, right? As time goes on, who does what? There's so many changes to keep up with. That's really common. So these are some of the challenges that you all brought to the forefront around awareness. Outreach and engagement, a couple of challenges that you brought to the forefront here were connection of trauma with families experiencing homelessness. So, you know, how do we help folks find affordable housing, meet their basic needs, and ensure that we're doing that in a trauma responsive way? We're getting them the services that they need to start to unpack and ultimately resolve their trauma, right? And so that's a huge challenge. Determining eligibility when homelessness experience extends beyond one school year. And I think this is really important, right? A lot of that has to do with that like enrollment and that navigating from one school year to the next school year. And we know that affordable housing in Ohio is very scarce and that folks are experiencing homelessness for significantly longer periods of time. And so the likelihood of seeing folks go from one school year to the next school year still experiencing unstable housing or unsheltered homelessness is even more likely. And so it's really important that we feel like we have the things that we need in place to meet those families where they're at within the school system. And then finally, some of the challenges you all brought up with professional development, staff and community having the time to do professional development around homelessness. I think that's huge. There's several people that aren't here today that registered, and that's probably, or that registered that aren't here, right? That's probably because they didn't have time. There's a couple of you that have already had to hop off because you had another call or a pressing issue, right? Like there's always so many things competing with professional development. So, you know, we do what we can around that, but it's a huge challenge and we have to find ways to get that stuff out there in a bite-sized way or in a way that meets people's schedules and meets them where they're at, just like we try to do for students and families. And then this topic often gets pushed back on the PD agendas. So I think that's pretty interesting. Professional development in the school space is kind of comes with the territory, I guess is how I would say it. You know, I work with a lot of different sectors in the homelessness system. Professional development is not as baked in as it is in the education system. And so I think it's really interesting in this education system where professional development is baked in, we still have a lot of gaps in what we're actually talking about in professional development, right? And so I think that's what's really being elevated here in terms of challenges. And when you go back and look at that pie chart of, well, how often are we doing professional development? Most people said annually. So if we're doing one big PD day a year, we're trying to cram all the topics into one day a year, inevitably we're going to miss some stuff. And so I think this stuff starts to track, right? We start to see like why it is the way that it is, right? And so what we want to kind of do here is start breaking into some of these challenges by breaking into breakout rooms. No real pun intended there. Digging in, breaking in, whatever. So we're going to use a Jamboard for this last couple minute activity with the time that we have left. We will revisit this in our next session, but we're going to kind of start to play with it a little bit today for about 10 minutes or so. So we put a link to the Jamboard in the chat. So you can open that up in another window so you can get in there and start to move around. If you need reminders on how Jamboard works, just let me know. I can pull it up on my screen real quick. Is that a yes? I'm happy to throw it up there on the screen real quick if needed. And actually, I will go ahead and do that so we can all sort of see it together. Why some of these questions to consider. So we looked at those challenges. Why are these issues important? What has been done to date to address some of these issues? how can community of practice help to address these issues? And that's a big one, because let's use this space, right? This is an opportunity for professional development where we're not talking about homelessness, right? So let's make sure we're taking advantage of that. How can we continue to leverage this space as an opportunity for more thinking through professional development? And then what action steps can be taken to further address this issue? And so we're going to go into breakout rooms together and talk through these together. And you can work in the Jamboard, or we will work in the Jamboard for you. So Ami will be in one room, I'll be in one room, and Evelyn will be in one room. And that is how we will work through this Jamboard. So if you need to stretch your legs or take a quick drink of water or do, a minute or two here, it's going to take me a second to recreate the breakout rooms, but I'm getting ready to do that. So you're going to have 3 rooms to choose from, one based on each challenge that you're interested in talking about today. And so give me at 2:16, we will jump into these breakout rooms and spend about 10 minutes talking about this today.
Lisa, do you want to share the Jamboard so everyone knows?
I'm working on it. A lot of clicking. Awesome. I see some stuff going on in the test board, which is great. I'm about to share it. There we go. All right, so the link is in the chat so you can get in there, but like I said, we will throw things on there for you. So you're really going to decide, do you want to talk about awareness? Do you want to work on outreach, or do you want to work on professional development today? I'm going to open up 3 breakout rooms. The first breakout room is going to be awareness. The second one's going to be outreach, and the third one's going to be professional development. So take a second and think about which one you want to do, and that will be the breakout room that you choose. And so I said we would do this, what did I say, 2:16?
And it's 2:16.
Yeah. Are you seeing the option to choose? Okay, perfect. Okay, some of you aren't, that's okay. You can just tell me, put in the chat which number you want if you don't see the option to choose. So number 1 is, did I get this right? Awareness is number 1, outreach is number 2, and professional development is number 3. So go ahead and choose the one that you want. If you can't choose, put the number that you want in the chat and I will move you into the room that you want. Marcy, where do you want to go?
She put in the chat 3.
Oh, thank you. All right, Ami, I'm putting you in 1.
Okay.
Evelyn, I'm putting you in 3.
Makes sense. You got the popular room, Lisa.
No. Ashley, do you want